Meet Hugh. Hugh and his family are from Vietnam, and like many other Vietnamese, they fled to seek refuge in Australia after the Second World War. Vietnam is a country in Southeast Asia, which borders with China, Laos, and Cambodia. Its landscapes are very diverse, from rolling hills, thick dense forest, and tropical lowlands. In 1976, the first boat arrived in Australia carrying Vietnamese refugees, and by 1981, the Vietnamese population in Victoria was over 12,000, including our friend Hugh. When discussing how Vietnamese food culture has affected Australia, we first need to look at the historical influences of Vietnam and how that has affected their food. The two main influences on Vietnamese culture comes from its neighbouring country China and a French influence from their French colonial rulers. The Chinese, who dominated Vietnam for 1,000 years, taught them cooking techniques such as stir-frying, deep-frying, and the use of chopsticks. When the French colonised Vietnam between 1858 and 1954, they introduced foods such as baguettes, pâté, coffee with cream, milk, butter, and cakes. Examples of these influences can be seen in a classic Vietnamese dish of banh mi, which uses baguette topped with pâté, pickled vegetables, and grilled meat or tofu, and also possibly the most famous Vietnamese dish of pho, which contains Chinese and French influences in the use of spices and stock techniques. Current day staples of the Vietnamese diet include rice, fish sauce, rice paper, tofu, coriander, green mango, green papaya, among many others. And common additions to food include fish sauce, hoisin, chili sauce, star anise, rice paddy herbs, spearmint herbs, Asian basil, banana leaves, and kohlrabi. China's influence also brought Buddhism to Vietnam, and with that, a sophisticated style of Vietnamese cooking. On the first and middle days of each lunar month, which are the full moon and silver moon, many Vietnamese do not eat meat. On these days, many street vendors will have vegetarian dishes available. A traditional vegetarian dish is cam bi ro ham dua, which is braised pumpkin with coconut milk. Vietnamese Buddhists will also avoid onion, garlic, and leek. Vietnamese meals are usually served all at once and are shared dishes. They are set on a low table and the family sits on mats on the floor. Each person has a rice bowl, chopsticks, and a spoon. Tea is the most common beverage, and snacks are usually purchased from street vendors, and some examples could be spring rolls or pork meatballs on a stick. Breakfast is usually pho or other soup and noodle dishes. Vietnamese culture and cooking techniques balance 5 elements: wood, fire, earth, metal, and water. 5 tastes of sweet, sour, bitter, salty, and spicy. 5 colours: green, red, yellow, white, and black. And 5 nutrients: carbohydrates, protein, fat, minerals, and water. The main agriculture for export for Vietnam is wheat and products, barley and products, sugar, mustard seed, and milk excluding butter. The Vietnamese food culture in Australia has been exposed through many channels, through TV travel shows, cooking channels, social media, and the amount of Aussies travelling to Asia, and immigrants opening cafes, restaurants, and bakeries. And if we remember our friend Hugh, he is not at a loss of choices of his home cuisine. With over 45 Vietnamese restaurants in his hometown of Richmond, as well as 29 Asian supermarkets, it is clear that Vietnamese culture has had a big impact in Australia today. In recent years, Vietnamese food has been recommended by nutritionists as a healthy lunch option, which has made the cuisine more mainstream.